You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
With so many protests against the NRC and the Citizenship Act every day, with so many people dissenting vocally against the government decisions, with so many areas under Section 144, internet connectivity suspended in several areas, let's go back to the beginning. Why are these protests happening anyway? What exactly are people against? Are people simply dissenting because they're miscalculating the impact of NRC and the Citizenship Act? Recently, ANI, which is an Indian news agency, put up an FAQ on the NRC and the Citizenship Act, attributing it not to any government sources, not to any experts, just quote-unquote sources. This was done, according to the document, to prevent misinformation. And I'm just going to read one line from the document. It says, "Do not get misled, do not fall victim to misinformation. Here are the real facts on Citizenship Amendment Act." And in India, when it's always raining misinformation and fake news on social media and WhatsApp forwards every day, is this particular FAQ on the CAA and NRC that's based on quote-unquote sources presenting absolute truths? So to prevent misinformation being spread by, again, quote-unquote sources, in this episode of The Big Story, we're going to analyze what this fact sheet says and how much of it is actually valid. You're listening to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And the headlines that are coming from many parts of India are all about citizen and student protests against the NRC and the CAA. On 19 December, a pan-Indian protest was planned, but in many places the protests didn't go peacefully as expected because Section 144 was imposed in exactly those areas where the protests were being planned in. The entire state of UP, the Lal Killa and Mandi House areas in Delhi, all of Bengaluru and Mangaluru. In fact, in Mangaluru, 2 people died from police firing and around 15 journalists were detained when they were covering the incident about the police firing. There are internet shutdowns in certain areas as per the tradition that India has created. India is famous for being the democracy that has the highest number of internet shutdowns the minute there's any dissent against the government. Buses after buses were packed with protesters who were detained. And you can check out yesterday's episode of The Big Story where we talked about whether imposing Section 144 has been legitimate in these cases or not. But now, since all this is happening, the question is, why is this happening at all?
Want to hear the rest of this podcast? Check out the link to the full episode in the description below and follow The Quint on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, and all other platforms we are on.